Let's start with a character whose fate concerned us perhaps more than any other, Jesse Pinkman. The movie El Camino gave us catharsis, showing Jesse finally breaking free and driving off to Alaska under the new name, Mr. Driscoll. It was an ending full of hope, but at the same time, open-ended. What happened to him next? And it is here that the fan community almost unanimously arrived at one of the most beautiful and logical theories. In Alaska, Jesse Pinkman became a carpenter, and I really like this theory. The romantic in me wants to believe that he goes to Alaska and lives a peaceful life alone with nature. This theory didn't come from nowhere. Its roots go deep into the third season of the series, in the episode titled Kafkaesque, where Jesse, at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, delivers one of the most poignant monologues in the history of the show. He talks about how he made a wooden box in shop class back in school, and the way he describes it is pure poetry. It's a hymn to creation. Listen to his words.
I had built this thing. You should have seen it. It was insane. I built it out of Peruvian walnuts with inlaid zebra wood. It was fitted with pegs, no screws. I sanded it for days until it was smooth as glass. Then I rubbed all the wood with tung oil so it was rich and dark. You know, you put your nose in it and breathed in. It was perfect.
In these words, we see not just a memory of a school project. We see Jesse's soul. We see his true, hidden potential, the ability to create something beautiful, unique, perfect with his own hands. He describes the process with the same passion and attention to detail that Walter White applies to chemistry. But, as is always the case with Jesse, this bright image is followed by a devastating fall. The monologue ends with the tragic phrase,
I traded it for an ounce of weed.
This one line is the perfect metaphor for his entire life up to the series finale. Time and time again, he traded his huge potential, his chance at a normal, creative life, for momentary pleasure, for a fix, for easy money, for another self-destructive impulse. This idea also finds confirmation in El Camino. In one of the flashbacks, while being held captive by the neo-Nazis, exhausted and broken, Jesse mentally transports himself to his workshop, where he works on that very box with a smile and tranquility. This is his inner sanctuary, his dream of a different life. The film's ending gives him a chance to make this dream a reality. Vince Gilligan admitted that he considered another, much darker version of the ending. In it, Jesse, hiding near the Canadian border, would try to save a young woman, but in the process, he would be caught by the police. The final scene would have shown us Jesse in a prison cell, where he, paradoxically, would find peace and be able to sleep for the first time in a long time. But Gilligan and his team of writers abandoned this idea, deciding that Jesse deserved not peace behind bars, but real freedom. They consciously chose a happy ending for him. And the image of the carpenter, a person who builds rather than destroys, is the most perfect embodiment of this freedom.
Yeah, man, I can do better.
And now let's move from Jesse's tragedies to the secrets of the White family. And one of the oldest and most persistent theories states that Walter Jr.'s biological father is not Walt, but Ted Beneke, Skyler's former boss. If you doubt it, just look at the eyebrows. This whole theory, in essence, rests on a single phrase from the second season. When Skyler comes to apply for a job with Ted, they exchange pleasantries. She says that her son has grown up and become very handsome, to which Ted, with a smug grin, replies,
"Good genes."
At that moment, Skyler awkwardly looks away, and it was this ambiguous line and her reaction that became the main proof for many fans. As circumstantial evidence, Skyler and Ted's past relationship is also cited, and the fact that Walter Jr. doesn't look or act much like his father. Walt and Skyler's marriage was not perfect before the start of the series, and Skyler had a past relationship with him. However, to be objective, the evidence base for this theory is extremely weak. Ted's phrase is much easier and more logical to interpret as clumsy flirting or simply a compliment to Skyler. The series, known for its meticulous attention to detail, gives us no other hint of this secret. And yet, such a revelation would completely overturn the entire story. Walt's entire initial motivation is to provide for his family, his son.
all that I've done, all the sacrifices that I have made for this family, all of it will be for nothing if you don't accept what I've earned.
If it turned out the son wasn't his, it would turn a high tragedy into a cheap soap opera, which is completely out of character for Breaking Bad. The theory that Ted could be Holly's father is completely shattered by the timeline of events. Skyler was already pregnant when she started working for Ted again. So why is this theory so popular despite its shakiness? Because it has enormous thematic significance. It fits perfectly into the narrative of Walter White's humiliation and subsequent transformation. At the beginning of the series, his male ego is constantly under attack. Cancer, lack of money, inability to provide for his family. Ted Beneke is his complete opposite, a successful, confident, attractive man with whom Skyler was once close. The theory that Ted is also the father of his son is a symbolic castration of Walt, the ultimate humiliation. Fans cling to this theory not because it's true, but because it makes Walt's drama even more acute. It's as if it retroactively inflicts the same wound on him as Skyler's words in the third season.
I fucked Ted.
This phrase was a weapon, designed to wound him to the very heart. And the paternity theory makes this wound original, fundamental. If the theory about Ted Beneke's paternity is speculation on the theme of Walt's male ego, then the next theory is a dark reflection of how part of the audience perceived his wife.
What are you doing? You can't be serious with the baby and Walt? Skyler, you're not smoking around the baby, are you? Shut up! Shut up!
We are talking about the theory according to which Walter Jr.'s cerebral palsy was caused by Skyler smoking during pregnancy. The evidence here, as in the previous case, is purely circumstantial. We see Skyler, under colossal stress due to Walt's criminal life, start smoking heavily during her pregnancy with Holly. The theory simply extrapolates this behavior into the past, suggesting that she behaved the same way when she was pregnant with Walter Jr. Some fans even found medical studies confirming a link between maternal smoking and the risk of cerebral palsy in a child, which gave the theory a veneer of plausibility. She smoked cigarettes during her pregnancy with her daughter, so it is very likely she did it with Jr. as well. However, the series itself gives no reason to believe this. In flashbacks from the time of her first pregnancy, we see Skyler happy and carefree. Moreover, the series also has a canonical explanation for Walter Jr.'s condition. Walter Jr.'s cerebral palsy is related to the difficult birth she had last time. The next theory concerns Brock, Andrea's young son, and claims that his father was none other than the insane and unstable Tuco Salamanca. The entire theory is built on two shaky foundations. First, some fans saw a physical resemblance between the actor who played Brock and Tuco. Second, the logic was as follows. Andrea used methamphetamine in the past, which means her paths could well have crossed with a major dealer like Tuco. Andrea met Tuco because she used to use methamphetamine, and Tuco sold it. However, this theory is very easily disproven by a simple check of the facts and the series chronology. When I was researching this theory, I discovered that during the period when Brock would have been conceived, Tuco was in prison. Brock was born in 2003, and Tuco was sent to prison in 2002 and released in 2005. Therefore, this is unlikely. Back when the series was still airing, the atmosphere of paranoia was so thick that everyone was under suspicion. And one of the most popular theories at the time was the theory that Steve Gomez, Hank's loyal partner and best friend, was actually a mole working for Gus Fring or the cartel.
I'm Steve Gomez. I'm with the DEA, Drug Enforcement.
I honestly expected Gomez to be connected to the cartel or Gus. The evidence seemed very convincing at the time. The Drug Enforcement Administration was always one step behind. Hank was constantly hindered. They tried to transfer him to another state, far from Albuquerque. The peak of suspicion was the scene where Gomez conducts a search of the laundry, under which Gus's super lab was hidden. To many, including me, this search seemed too superficial, as if Gomi was just pretending to search to reassure his obsessed partner. The DEA was always slow to support Hank, even though he was right from the beginning. Of course, now knowing the whole story, we understand that there were other, simpler explanations for all of this. The DEA was slow because Hank's theories seemed crazy and lacked solid evidence. The transfer was a real promotion. And the search of the laundry was a gesture of friendship. Gomez was just playing along with Hank, who was confined to his bed but couldn't rest. Ultimately, Gomez's unwavering loyalty, his willingness to follow Hank to the end, to his very death in the desert, completely refutes this theory. His character was a moral compass, a symbol of true friendship, and a betrayal would have destroyed that image. No, he just wasn't as good an investigator as Hank. But the very persistence of this theory at the time proves how masterfully the series immersed the viewer in the minds of its characters. And its subsequent refutation only emphasizes the tragedy of Hank's story. He was right from the start, and his only true ally died beside him.
All this, everything that's happened, I swear to God, Marie, I think the universe is trying to tell me something, and I'm finally ready to listen.
And now about the enigma, about Gustavo Fring. Theories about him are so extensive that they deserve a separate video. I already made one video about his mysterious past in Chile and possible connections to the Pinochet regime. The link will be in the description. And now I will talk about something else. Gustavo Fring always seemed like the perfect businessman and strategist. One theory states that Gus Fring, a man of pathological caution, knew about Walter White and had been watching him long before their official meeting. Think about it. A new player appears on his territory, producing methamphetamine of unprecedented purity. And this producer is a chemist with a brilliant past, whose work once helped his colleagues win a Nobel Prize. Would such a meticulous and controlling person as Gus really not have conducted a thorough background check? Of course he did. Therefore, their first meeting at Los Pollos Hermanos was not an introduction, but a final interview, the last stage of the vetting process. Behind the scenes, he probably learned everything he needed to know about him. But the most important theory, which reveals the entire essence of Gustavo Fring, is related to the murder of 11-year-old Tomás Cantillo, Andrea's brother. The theory claims that Gus personally and cold-bloodedly ordered the boy's murder to manipulate Jesse. His plan was brilliant in its cruelty. He wanted to get rid of Jesse, whom he considered an unreliable addict, and replace him with the obedient Gale. Gus knew that Tomás's murder would provoke Jesse into a suicidal attack on his dealers. The problem would solve itself, cleanly and without any fuss. Gus calculated that Jesse would take revenge on the rival dealers as soon as his girlfriend's brother was killed. The key to understanding this theory lies in comparing two scenes. The first is his conversation with Walt after Walt saved Jesse. Gus puts on a whole performance. He feigns mortal offense, his voice trembling with righteous anger as he utters,
"Are you asking me if I ordered the murder of a child?"
Now recall another scene, a season later. When Walt interferes with his plans, Gus, looking him in the eye, without a shadow of emotion, absolutely calmly and casually utters one of the most terrifying phrases in television history.
"I will kill your wife. I will kill your son. I will kill your infant daughter."
Everything he says and does is extremely calculated, and there is not a drop of emotion in it. It is in this contrast that the true face of Gus Fring lies. He exists in two realities simultaneously. There is the public Gus, the respectable businessman, philanthropist, pillar of the community, who is horrified at the very thought of violence against a child. And there is the real Gus, a ruthless monster for whom a child's life is just a pawn on a chessboard, a piece that can be sacrificed to achieve a goal. His indignation in the conversation with Walt was not for Walt. Gus knew he wouldn't believe him. It was the performance of a role. He had to maintain the facade always and everywhere. And the threat to kill Holly is so frightening precisely because in that moment, the mask slips. He is not playing. He is stating a fact. By connecting these two lines, we see the complete terrifying portrait. Morality for Gus is not something he lacks. It is a suit that he puts on and takes off at his discretion. And this calculated, cold duality makes him perhaps the greatest villain of the entire series. As I promised, we won't dwell on Gus's connections to the Pinochet regime, but there is a related and, in my opinion, even more intriguing theory. Gustavo Fring was not actually Chilean at all. His entire Chilean biography is a carefully crafted legend, a false identity created to hide a much darker past. Most likely, Gustavo Fring is not his real name. Let's look at the facts that just don't add up. First, his Spanish.
Ya les había dicho, no van a matar a Walter White. No hasta que haya concluido mi negocio con él.
For a native speaker, he speaks terribly. Yes, it might not be noticeable to us, but any Chilean will tell you that people don't speak like that. Secondly, his race. In Chile, at the time Gus supposedly lived there was practically no black population. Thirdly, the surname Fring itself. It is of German, not Spanish origin. And finally, the most interesting part, the story he tells Hector Salamanca in Better Call Saul. He recalls catching a coati in his childhood, which was stealing fruit from a lucuma tree. Well, neither coatis nor lucuma are native to Chile. There are no coatis in Chile. So who was he really? One of the most convincing versions states that Gus was from Guyana. This explains everything. Guyana has a large black population. The official language is English, which explains his flawless English and poor Spanish. And coatis and lucuma are indeed found there. According to this theory, he was some kind of operative, possibly connected to international intelligence, who used Chile as a convenient cover. His legend was so good that even the cartel accepted it, albeit with a touch of irony, calling him the Chilean. Remember Don Eladio's words when he spared Gus.
Escúchame. La única razón por la cual tú estás vivo y él no es porque yo sé quién eres tú. Pero entiéndeme bien, ya no estás en Chile.
This phrase takes on a whole new meaning. Eladio is not talking about geography, but about the fact that here, in Mexico, his Chilean connections and legend have no power. He knows his true, much more dangerous nature. Now, let's return to Gale. I've already said that he is a symbol of scientific innocence destroyed by Walt, but there are also much darker theories about his past that try to explain why such a brilliant chemist would get involved in crime at all. One of them, the most shocking, suggests that Gale was a sex offender, possibly a pedophile. Theories mainly concern the possibility that Gale was accused of sexual assault and couldn't find work anywhere else. It sounds monstrous, but this theory has its own, albeit circumstantial, evidence. Proponents of this version point to his karaoke video of the song Major Tom.
Standing there alone, the ship is waiting, all systems are go. Are you sure? Controller's not convinced. Standing there alone, the ship is waiting, all systems are go. Are you sure? Controller's not convinced.
Notice that the video has Thai subtitles. This could be just a coincidence, or it could be a hint at sex tourism in Thailand, infamous for its child prostitution industry. Furthermore, his libertarian philosophy, expressed by the phrase,
consenting adults want what they want,
sounds particularly sinister in this context. This theory asserts that because of his past, Gale couldn't find a job in the legal field, despite his qualifications, and that's why he so easily agreed to work for Gus.
There's crime, and then there's crime, I suppose. I'm definitely a libertarian.
Another less shocking but no less interesting theory examines his relationship with Gus. It states that Gale was not just a hired chemist, but a kept man of sorts, a new Max for both Gus's business and personal needs. We know that Gus was gay, and his connection with Max was very deep. After Max's death, Gus nurtured a plan for revenge for 20 years, which speaks to the incredible strength of his feelings. The theory suggests that in Gale, he found not just a replacement chemist, but also a person who fit his type. Young, a bit otherworldly, but brilliant in his field. Gus paid for Gale's education, he mentored him, and perhaps saw him as a potential partner, trying to recreate what he had lost with Max. This theory doesn't necessarily imply a consummated romantic relationship, but it suggests a deep personal attachment on Gus's part, which makes his decision to put Gale in the line of fire even more tragic and calculated. This adds another layer to the image of Gus as a man for whom even personal sympathies and attachments are ultimately just tools in his grand game.